This is quite dangerous and you'll likely die. Do you accept? Oh, yes! Lilo and Stitch is the latest in a long line of Disney live-action adaptations where it was written and directed by Dean Fleischer-Camp, who did Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, a terrific film from A24. Dean plays himself in the movie, and it's lighthearted, but also with some heavy moments. You will laugh, you will cry, you will enjoy Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. So, with that in mind, for those that like that film, you might wonder if there's going to be some more levity added to this live-action adaptation. Now, if you have somehow avoided whatever Lilo and Stitch is, if you don't know anything about it, here's a spoiler-free rundown. You have an alien genetic experiment bred for destruction called Experiment 626 from Mr. Professor Dr. Jumba, however you want to label him. And basically, Experiment 626 escapes. He hijacks a ship, lands in Hawaii, befriends a little girl named Lilo, who is under the care of her big sister Nani, and then destruction, hilarity, and heart all ensues. And honestly, one of Disney's last great animated movies. I mean, I'm not saying they didn't do anything good after that, but really, Lilo and Stitch was kind of the tentpole. And then they did Treasure Planet earlier or later that year that wasn't really that well received. But Lilo and Stitch was really, really lighthearted with a damn, bit of hard, just slap in the face stuff about acceptance and Ohana means family and all that. So if you do know about Lilo and Stitch and the sequels and the spin-offs and all that stuff, I think I maybe saw the direct-to-DVD sequel once. I rewatched the original animated movie just to get freshened up and decided, okay, well, the live-action Disney adaptations have not exactly been on a massive string of success, not even referring to box office. You can go back to the 2019 Lion King. They did Pete's Dragon a couple years before that. They did Dumbo. That wasn't well received. Little Mermaid, poor Halle Bailey. She doesn't deserve, what she's going through. And she was not the biggest problem with that. You had Mufasa the Lion King that wasn't very good, and various others have been sprinkled about. And also recently, Snow White, that was snake bit. Rachel Zegler deserves to have a hell of a goddamn career because it was not her fault about that movie. The whole point is live-action Disney adaptations are not exactly that well received. In fact, they kind of have a stigma about them, so even the pretty good ones end up maybe not doing as well as they should have. Now, the original Lilo and Stitch, I think made 3 times its budget. It was $80 million or so. It did spin off a lot of toys, a lot of merchandise, a lot of stuff, a lot of quotable lines. Blue punch buggy, all that. Stitch, my name's Stitch. And Chris Sanders returns as the voice of Stitch, a blue alien creature. And this is a mixture of CGI and also, just real life characters. So a live-action adaptation of Lilo and Stitch wasn't the worst idea. There are 2 other writers that are involved. One of them did a movie called Dear David, a film so unremarkably bland, I honestly forgot that I even reviewed it. So you have Lilo, played by Maya Kealoha, who, she does fine. She does fine, I'll say that much. You have her sister, Nani, played by Sydney Agudong. Shut up, this is serious. I'm not laughing at the last part of that last name. And they are trying to make ends meet and just move on from the fact that their parents are no longer with them. I'll talk a little bit about why in the spoiler section, but there's also a not a caregiver, a social worker, who is played by Tia Carrere, who was actually the voice of Nani in the original movie, so that was nice that she got to return. It's hard to believe she's almost 60. She does fine. As Courtney B. Vance is in this as Cobra Bubbles. One thing that they excluded from this is some people are really pissed about, and I will talk about a couple more exclusions a little bit later on. But this is a big one. Captain Ganthu, the Shark Boy, not the one with Lava Girl, not the TNA wrestler, not him. He was excluded. I don't know why. It wasn't offensive, but it was a little bit odd. There are a few other exclusions and a bit more stretching out of the family drama. And we do also have Zach Galifianakis as Dr. Jumba, and we have Billy Magnuson, who was in No Time to Die and Game Night, as Pleakley. who's the one-eyed alien that wants to help. He wants to capture Experiment 626, but he also wants to make sure Earth is preserved. So, in the animated one, they were able to pack a whole lot in while letting some things breathe, and I think it was like 78 to 80 minutes, and it really was a fun romp, even with that ugly duckling part, which is another thing they excluded here. I just will say that, but they do try to, despite the exclusions, they do try to build the bond between, especially Lilo and Nani, but especially Lilo and Stitch, hence the title, and even Stitch trying to be more understanding, not just being bred for destruction, all that. So Dean understands the tone of that. The problem, or at least the biggest problem with this movie, is it ends up being painfully unnecessary and average and not all that good. None of it feels earned. A lot of the moments in this movie where, oh, you think the stunts or the physical comedy are going to be good, they really aren't. They feel very manufactured, and any of the changes they make just feels like it's padding out the runtime. I'm not saying they should have made this just 80 minutes, but I think it was like about 100 minutes bell to bell, and then we got like 8 minutes of credits. It didn't really work. It's all right, but it's not necessarily anything other than acceptable. Kids will like it. It will likely make a boatload of fucking cash because it's being released on Memorial Day weekend. It's got a couple weeks till the live-action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon comes out. So it's got free reign, basically, just make and just rake in a whole bunch of goddamn money, and it will. Kids will like it. People that were either kids when the first one came out or in their early 20s like myself were going to be conflicted about it. I did not hate this movie, but it's also so unremarkable. I'm probably not going to remember too much about it by the time, I even reach the fall. And by the time it's the end of the year, I may not even remember that I watched it. That being said, I am going to get into spoilers, so that's just your warning. It's in theaters now, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, they really pushed the goddamn, opening of this. Like, it almost felt like they edited through TikTok or even Vine, if anybody remembers Vine, where Jumba's on trial. 626 escapes very quickly, and, he took the red one and all that, and he took the red ship. And there is this one funny little side character about, getting ready to blow up the planet, but Pleakley's like, no, you can't do that. I do have to say Billy does a good job as Pleakley, all things considered. So, 626, Stitch, I'm just going to say Stitch, crash lands on the planet. And by the way, he cannot be in water. That increases his density and he'll drown just because of his genetic code, which they actually lean into more in this. I will give them credit for that. But we then see how Lilo is upset that her parents are gone. Her sister is trying, but her sister's also working a lot and isn't ready to necessarily be a parent or a guardian. But she means well. The character of David that was kind of the love interest from the first one, nothing against the actor, but that character is so unremarkable. I don't remember really anything that he does. There is another character, Tutu, played by Amy Hill, who's a neighbor. And I liked her inclusion. I will say that. She actually did a pretty good job and added a couple nice little bits of humor to this. And something at the end. They did take out Pleakley dressing in drag. That kind of got a little bit, of a backlash. I don't see it as a big deal, necessarily. It was what it was. I mean, it was fine, the animated one. If they didn't want to do it here, okay. I mean, I could see how some people that are LGBTQ might be offended. It did not bother me, but if it bothered you, I totally respect that. So, Courtney B. Vance as Cobra Bubbles. They flesh out his stuff a little bit more where he gets a few more scenes investigating all this stuff, and they don't even hide the fact that he actually is an FBI agent. The Grand Councilwoman is Hannah Waddingham, who's a terrific character actress. Really, really bright, really funny. Really does have a great look to her. I mean, with respect. She, very, very, very nice, actress, attractive, all that. She wasn't really given a bunch to do, and the way they designed the Grand Councilwoman here reminds me of how they designed the characters in Valerian, the City of a Thousand Planets. But they excluded the ugly duckling part, and I'm not going to recount a ton of, really, all the plot, because it's pretty much the same basic plot. He pretends to be a dog. The one thing that they did include in this was Jumba and Pleakley using cloning devices to become like different characters. AKA they got to play themselves because maybe they didn't want to spend the extra money, the $150 million budget that it was, on continuously CGIing them. That's fine. Physical comedy doesn't necessarily work in this. I think a lot of it just feels like a misfire. Maya as Lilo is okay at times, but other times she's a little bit annoying to the point where I'm like, maybe her being plucked from this whole situation might not be the worst thing. Might teach her a fucking lesson. But Chris Sanders as Stitch, he's fine. It doesn't feel like they do enough to like establish how he's so good with English, like, pretty early on. But there are some nice scenes. Lilo really tries to get through to him. He is very destructive. Nani can't hold down a job. They do flesh out a little bit more about Nani trying to be a marine biologist by having to put that on hold after her parents passed. Tutu wants her to, continue to pursue her dream and stuff like that. But Nani's really struggling. And I do want to say Mrs. Kyoka, who is voiced or is played by Tia Carrere, she's trying to give her like some guidelines. Hey, we really want to work with you here. We know it's tough. Get, have good employment, clean up this house, and get some health insurance, stuff like that, and you guys will be okay. And we'll work with you on this. So, there is also a portal-type gun that is used in a few comedic moments, and I guess attempts at dramatic moments a little bit later that Jumba and Pleakley have. There's the guy, the big fat guy with and that's just how they promote him in the movie, in either movie. The one with the snow cone, ice stuff, shaved ice, whatever it is, that plops out. That was, that was okay. That, however, just felt like almost, it just felt like, oh, you remember this from the animated movie? And it's just like, hey. And they took out the ugly duckling part, which actually, to me, took out the most emotional part of that. That part gets me every goddamn time, because Stitch feels alone. He doesn't want to just be bred for destruction. He does realize that there is more of a heart, or, more to life than just destroying shit. But eventually, as things go on, they do some surfing. Stitch ends up in the water. He's worried about drowning. He inadvertently drags Nani down, or not Nani, but Lilo down. Nani saves her. And Stitch ends up leaving, but not doing the ugly duckling part. He walks through the goddamn forest, and then he walks back into the pound where he was found after he got hit by a bus. And then Lilo finds him and is like, what in the world is going on? Why would you do that? Like, family, it may not be perfect, but that doesn't mean it's broken. We may fight, but that doesn't mean we don't love each other. Now that could have worked if, again, any of this felt like it was earned. And there's other stuff in this, sprinkled throughout. But then Jumba shows up, and we end up with some comedy with the portal gun thing. Because Stitch ends up using it and kind of doing a thing where where Jumba just ends up, Zach Galifianakis ends up going like through a portal thing. He just ends up going through and through and through. And eventually has to turn off his cloning device to stop that. Because he gets all big, and then he can see his own ass, because, there's the one in the ceiling and the one here on the floor, and, he can see his own ass, and then I don't know why that was supposed to be funny. Pleakley, however, means well and is trying to make sure everything goes smoothly, but even his character feels nerfed. And so basically they put Jumba pretty much in the Captain Ganthu, or Ganthu, however you say it, role, which almost feels like an unnecessary change, but it is what it is. So Courtney B. Vance basically is, he's a CIA agent. He is trying to, stop. He's working with the Galactic Grand Council, whatever the fuck it is, and he is trying to basically, quell this stuff about alien life. So we get a part where Jumba basically ends up taking Stitch away. There's a little side thing about a family picture, or a picture that Lilo has with her parents that she wants to save. Jumba destroys the house. Stitch realizes, wait a second, I don't want her to get hurt. And also Jumba kind of drops the line, you only got, her to accept you as a pet so you can be protected. Not wrong, but also kind of a dick move, Jumba. You're not exactly a saint either. So he takes him and takes him onto the goddamn ship. Lilo ends up sneaking onto the ship as well. Tutu does actually have some good scenes, like, during this where they're looking for her. They're looking for Lilo, and that's actually kind of nice. And Amy Hill does a good job here. And then they're just, we're on the ship. They're doing their comedy and stuff like that, and Jumba's trying to take him back. Pleakley is trying to Pleakley his case, har har, and essentially get, Nani and others, to, like, Nani, Tutu and David to go with to, save save Lilo. Courtney B. Vance shows up, Bubbles shows up. So they do that. Lilo and Stitch end up basically getting sending Jumba out of the goddamn ship because Jumba decides to be an idiot thinking that Lilo's just a dumb kid. And then it looks like things aren't it looks like things are going to end with them being separated because you got to keep them separated. Hey. And Lilo, it turns out, is going to go live with Tutu right next door. So, she's going to live with people. They're basically family. Nani's going to go off and be a marine biologist. Oh, wait. One little wrinkle. Just before that, Lilo and Stitch end up in the water. Stitch ends up basically saving her, but he's too heavy. She can't get him. And then Nani basically ends up going back down to save him, and we saw a little picture of her, saving, doing, some marine biology stuff, running underwater. So what does she do? She runs underwater, she gets Stitch to shore, and then they end up having to use jumper cables to shock him back. And her truck wouldn't usually start, but it did start this time because of a miracle of movie magic. And then basically he's brought back to life. The Grand Councilwoman shows up, says, Stitch, stay here. That's it. And then, life and energy and happiness, and we're all happy together. And Nani uses the portal gun to visit Lilo and Stitch, where Bubbles apparently is living with Tutu, I guess. I don't know. They kind of just threw a bunch of stuff in there at the end. It's an offensive live-action remake, but it's also just very generic. So that's really all I have to say right there. Are there other things they excluded? They excluded Blue Punch Buggy. They excluded that. They changed a few things around. But it's not offensive. It just feels like it. I don't know. The movie's just there. C+. It has a couple moments where it comes alive. C+. So agree, disagree, what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.